I'm Tom Baker, this is Chasing Cars, and this is the BMW 8 Series Gran Coupe. And the good news right at the start of this video is that this is a great BMW. And that'll be a relief to those of you who've been following along for the past year or two. And I think you'll agree with me that BMW have been putting out some really good cars, like the new 3 Series, and some cars that probably aren't quite up to the level that we've become used to, but this one really gets it right. In some ways that won't be a shock because this new badge for BMW is a long, low, slinky, rear drive, 4-door. I mean, that is BMW's bread and butter. And in today's review, an in-depth review of this 840i Gran Coupe, we're going to be checking out this luxurious BMW's design, its interior, its practicality, and then we're going to be taking this straight six rear drive saloon car out onto some great roads to see how it drives. But the 8 Series was never a 4-door in the beginning. It was a very 80s BMW, very, very cool. It was a coupe and convertible, and you can get coupe and convertible body styles in the new one. But BMW knows there's a market for a more practical option as well, and that's the vehicle we're reviewing here. So the Gran Coupe is, you know, a 4-door version of a coupe. BMW like to do that from time to time. But honestly, it really works in the 8 Series. I think it's a beautiful looking car outside, and I also think the interior is really striking, especially in this optional tartufo and white merino leather configuration. Now, this config does cost almost $10,000 more over the standard price of the car, but I think you'll agree it's genuinely super luxury grade. It would fit right in a Bentley or something like that. Now, the 8 Series interior actually looks quite different to other BMWs because it has this cascading console here that is totally separate to other interior designs, and it's a nod to the 8 Series of the 1980s. I actually like it. We still have the high-mounted 10.25-inch touchscreen that we've come to know from BMW. We have a digital driver's display that works well enough, but it doesn't include all that many features. We do have wireless Apple CarPlay as standard, and wireless Android Auto will be coming out later in 2020, so that's cool. So the technology is good. We still have the rotary controls down here, beautiful glass finishing on the iDrive and on the gear shifter, so it all feels suitably luxurious, as does the plethora of leather-lined surfaces. You know, it does feel its price, which is over $200,000 once you get this thing on the road. Plus the driving position, classic BMW, really low slung, legs right out in front of you, comfortable seating. I do think they could have massaging as standard. You have to pay more for that. But you also get a lot of light filtering into the cabin thanks to the dual sunroofs in this car. Those in the back get one as well. And it's reasonably practical. Big cup holders, wireless charging, large central box, plenty of USB-C charge ports. So up front, life's very good. One thing I will note quickly, couldn't they have given it a tan steering wheel? It's like the only black thing in the car, but it's very nice regardless. Let's jump in the back seat. The frameless doors are a pretty cool feature of the 8 Series and pretty rare on BMWs these days, so that's nice. But do adults fit in the back? The answer to that is yes, they do. So I'm 6 foot tall. I have, you know, a ½ inch or so of headroom above me. Legroom's no problem. Toe room is constricted, but I've got plenty of space in my own footwell. And that brings me on to what I have to say about this car is that I think the 8 Series Gran Coupe should actually be the 7 Series. I don't think there's any need to have a really conservative sedan anymore because the X7 is so brilliant at doing the chauffeur-driven thing. It is truly a 7 Series SUV. So I would be brave on the sedan and I'd just make this the 7 Series. Honestly, I think it'd be perfect for it. We have this nice center console here, separate temperature zone, 2 USB-C ports, air vents, flip down armrest, beautifully finished in the two-tone, cup holders, and the seats themselves, which look cool, are also seriously comfortable. And we have our own sunroof back here, as I mentioned. So it's very nice. But do you get much boot space? Well, you do actually. Even though it's called the Gran Coupe, BMW seem to be forgetting that that used to be like a liftback in the 4 Series Gran Coupe because it's a sedan with an electric boot. I mean, it's 200 grand, I suppose you expect that. And there's a reasonable amount of space. The boot goes back a really long way, though it is quite narrow. We do have a little netted area here, first aid kit over there. You know, it's not massive, it is what it is. It'll fit in a couple of large suitcases without a problem, which is all you really need in a vehicle like this anyway, because it's really about the driving, and that's where we're going next. So the 8 Series Gran Coupe looks pretty good outside, it looks sporty. Do the driving dynamics live up to the aesthetics? Well, the short answer to that is yes, they do. This is a great vehicle to drive, and a great BMW to drive as well, because the 8 Series Gran Coupe, especially the 840i that I'm driving now, really rings true to all the things that BMWs have been traditionally great at. It's a straight six, engines mounted far back, rear wheel drive, low center of gravity, and then also virtues like great steering that have been engineered carefully into the vehicle. But first I want to talk about engines and why the 840i is actually the one to go for and not the bigger V8. So overseas there's an 840D, which is a straight six diesel. We don't get that in Australia. So we have a choice between two petrol engines, the 6-cylinder 840i, which is in this car, which is the very familiar BMW B58 inline six, producing 250 kilowatts of power and 500 Newton meters of torque. Or you can upgrade at significant extra expense to the M850i, which is a 4.4 litre twin turbo V8 petrol, making a lot more power, 390 kilowatts of power and 750 Newton meters of torque. And the V8 is very burly, it's very loud and extroverted and seriously fast, especially because it has a standard all-wheel drive system, so it delivers 0 to 100 kilometers per hour in 3.9 seconds. Now the 840i is slower, it's rear drive only, and it puts up a 0 to 100 time of 5.2 seconds, but that is not slow in anyone's estimation. And the other huge benefit the 840i has, comparing like for like Gran Coupe to Gran Coupe, is the 840i weighs 200 kilograms less than the M850i. So that does wonders for the handling. I reckon the M850i is really cool in either Gran Coupe or normal coupe or convertible, but it does feel big and heavy. The 840i, by contrast, feels light as air, darty, agile, eager to turn in, has much less weight over the front end, and that weight is further back because that engine is smaller and the engine is lighter. There's no all-wheel drive system to lug around, so it's much lighter and it's much more pure, and the vehicle shrinks around you so much more if you get the straight six. So for me, this is a no-brainer. Save your money, save the weight, go for the 840i. You're still getting a tremendously fast car, and I would argue a faster car point to point with how quickly you can hustle this vehicle down your favorite roads, like I'm doing now. And you'll have lots of fun because it sounds good and because all of the control surfaces are lovely. The steering is mid-weighted, maybe a little heavier than mid-weighted. It's really direct, there's no slack on center. The comfort mode's tuning for the steering is perfect. Sport mode makes it a little artificially heavy. There's a good connection to the front wheels, which are shot in actually Michelin Pilot Sport 3s, so an older tire, but the grip level is really there even on a patchy wet day like today. On corner exit you can have a little bit of fun with the throttle and just balance the car. It will put the back out really easily if you want, but otherwise it just delivers really nice rear drive dynamics, safe, secure, predictable, enjoyable. Visibility is also better than you'd expect. Out the back it's a little bit limited, but not as bad as it looks from outside. The brakes are up to scratch. And then there's the ride, and we do need to have a frank conversation about the ride. Now the 840i has 20-inch wheels as standard, so it's quite a big wheel, and it's an M Sport by default in Australia, so we have M Sport adaptive dampers. There's no air suspension available, and so it's just a firm ride. On a great road like this, it's appropriate because you want really good body control, you don't want too much lean in the corners, and it sits nice and flat, which helps you. The issue is at really low speed, the urban ride is pretty patchy, even uncomfortable, especially if you live somewhere like I do where there's quite a lot of concrete road surfaces and therefore hard edges and imperfections. So you just get a bit of banging through into the cabin, and that's something that on air suspension or in a vehicle with slightly more sensibly smaller wheels you won't have so much intrusion. But if there's mostly smooth roads in your area, or you just like a firmer ride, then I think you'll be okay with it. I just would have liked to have seen a slightly softer option, I think, available for the suspension, but at the end of the day, this is meant to be more sporty than luxurious, I reckon. It's deeply refined, the 8 Series. There's absolutely no NVH concerns. It's super smooth, super silky, really quiet in the cabin. And the safety systems are really good too. So we have BMW's assisted driving program here. So that's really good adaptive cruise control. Strong lane keep assist with lane tracing. We have a 360-degree camera, blind spot monitoring, front and rear cross traffic alert. So there's a pretty good suite looking out for you. So those are our detailed thoughts on the new BMW 8 Series Gran Coupe. Look, I really like this car. Yep, it's expensive, yeah, it's decadent, but there is a market for really luxurious four-doors that fulfill their brief basically perfectly. This car is fast, fun to drive, gorgeously made, and properly luxurious. Plus, it's a lot cheaper than something like an entry-level Bentley four-door, and it's a good alternative to consider if you're looking at that sort of vehicle. I'd go for the 6-cylinder rather than the V8, and I'd have mine in a configuration just like this one, though I'm not actually in the market to spend 200 grand on a car right now. Never know. Let me know what you think of the 8 Series down below this video, any requests or comments on the channel, and as always, thanks for your loyalty and thanks for watching Chasing Cars.